Hi, I'm Rigger. This is Your Right, and today, I guess it's time we have a bit of a real talk. I'm not gonna do the usual rundown, just ding, there's that, but we need to talk about this. So, let's try to not let this get out of hand, okay? I'm sure a lot of people will jump in here and just dislike this video because of the title, but let's really discuss this. Also, I understand there's like a joke irony to me saying how important it is to talk about this when the point of what I'm gonna say is that someone shouldn't speak, but I'm honestly just move past the joke because we got a real topic to talk about. Neo should never speak. I'm gonna be very honest, this is one of those things that I didn't realize I cared so much about. That was until I started making YouTube videos, and seeing how comments are, and I'm becoming more of the RWBY community to an extent. I love the show, and I've had theories and ideas long before I started a channel, obviously, but I didn't really put myself in the fandom. I sort of stayed away from a lot of the community and outside stuff, and I just sort of watched the show. But now I'm here. I was thinking about video ideas one day, and I was just writing down things to talk about, and I wrote down that this could be something to talk about because I always thought she shouldn't speak. And the more I thought about it and the more I worked on it, I really feel like I have an opinion on this one, a strong opinion. Obviously, it's just a show. These are made up characters, and that just goes without saying. Storytelling and writing are my thing, so you don't need to tell me, I get it, like they're fake. But I do really have some thoughts on this that go deeper than Neo is cool and I want them to do it my way. Because Neo is special. She's a lot of people's favorite character, and she is absolutely one of my favorites too. I definitely call her my most consistent favorite character in the show. She is extra special to a lot of people because everything about her is kind of an accident. She was added to the show last minute. Her powers and their design were basically an accident as well, created by time constraints, because they had to get the episode out. She's one of the best fighters hand-to-hand in the narrative, and she's been made so much more of a mystery, and it's enticing to the audience, because we don't know much about her. The mountain of theories, backstories, fanfictions, comics, and art about her is insane. Look at what happened with the Brunswick Farms thing. People had any glint it might be to do with Roman and her, and it's still going. We, as the audience, loved her so much. That's why when she left the show in Volume 3, the only thing people asked for years and years was, when is she coming back? The audience feels some ownership over her, it seems. It's like she's a little bit our contribution to the show. She's sort of our character. She was put in without much of a plan, and the fan support has driven her to stay involved even now. We fully, as a collective, demanded Neo return. And the fact that that sentiment was so strong, she eventually was brought back to the show, and she continues to be relevant to the plot. It shows just how strong that connection is, and it just makes the audience all the more invested in her. The fact that she's also just awesome in the show just makes it all the better. But now we get to the crux of this thing. Neo is mute. So this can be a difficult thing to approach. For the longest time it added so much to her, on a mystery level, on a story level. She gave up no secrets, no hints. It added to her mystery and simply helped get people involved, people interested in her. Again, being initially paired with one of the biggest talkers in the show also worked really well for a dynamic. The fact that he did all the talking and scheming while Neo was clearly the superior fighter and incredibly powerful with her semblance, plus her small stature, and yet she was near untouchable, but still defaulted to Roman. It was so interesting. In fact, she's so dedicated to him still. It's enthralling, and we don't have all the answers. I think what I'm trying to say is that initially, her being mute added so much to her appeal because of how it worked in the plot. The fact you don't know things and she literally isn't telling you anything, it only built her appeal. I've seen snarky reviews say that it means she also can't be ruined by all the terrible dialogue. Look, I'll criticize the dialogue if it needs to be criticized, and to a degree it's correct in that any character who doesn't speak obviously can't say bad lines or something people will have a problem with. But I don't think is that she was saved from terrible dialogue in particular. She's just so unique that it can't be ignored, and all while remaining silent. To me, the greatest advantage of her being silent isn't that she couldn't say bad dialogue, it's that it's forced her to be so expressive. Her fighting style is one of the most unique in the show. Her facial expressions are usually the best in the show. That was even true early on, because they had to be. To communicate what she wanted to say, her poses, her movements, and her expression required extra work, and I honestly think it helped improve the show overall. Neo pushed the animation requirements forward simply by being who she was, and the rest of the show saw the benefit of that. So now we get to the point. You can all say that it's fine, and everything I've said here is true, but why then should Neo never speak? Okay, first up I want to say this doesn't come from nowhere. I see this everywhere. The more common one I see is that now she has the lamp again especially, perhaps she'll ask about Roman. That'd be really sweet. If she managed to choke out a very scratchy Jin, or found a workaround for Jin, and instead her only one word in the series was Roman. You know, and I've seen other versions of this, that she's in a confrontation perhaps with RWBY, who asks why she's doing this, and again she just manages to say Roman's name. Now, I agree that her unending loyalty to Roman and the idea that she still fights for him and to get revenge for him without going into all the detail is great. I like that as a character. But what I just can't get on board with is this equates that she should say Roman's name for that point. I get that on the surface it's really sweet that the new character's one and only word is the person who means the most to them. That it may even be her dying word. Perhaps she only says one word on her deathbed. That is the other version I see so much, that Neo is finally killed in the last moments. She manages to say Roman's name, she smiles, and she passes away. And now she can finally be with him again. How sweet and beautiful it is. Well, no, not really. It has all the setup of a sweet thing, right? The person who could never do blank does blank just when it matters or at a touching moment. That's writing 101. It works almost every time. When you explain it like I just explained it, it sounds like it should work. What's wrong with that? I mean, they literally use that writing trope in Die Hard even. Sergeant Powell accidentally shot a child during his career, and he could never bring himself to draw his gun again. It's a very sad moment and a very real moment in this action movie. At the end, one last bad guy survived and is about to kill John, and bang, bang, bang from off screen, and he did it. Powell saved the day and overcame his fear. He, even as a secondary character, has his own little arc, and he gets to be the hero with John. It gets praised for being great writing, especially for what is supposed to just be an action movie. And it is. It's great. But here's the problem. When you do this thing, it's built around overcoming. The key is overcoming. Powell overcomes his fear to do what he has to do to save the day. In Dragon Ball Z, RWBY, the silly comedic side character, overcomes his fear, and he cuts off Vegeta's tail, saving the day. Even though it's more comedic in its tone and delivery, it does the same thing for the story. Then, later in Dragon Ball Z, more dramatically, Vegeta is on his deathbed and he lets go of his pride and arrogance and asks Goku, who he hates, to sincerely avenge their people and destroy the monster that is Frieza. The same goes for Darth Vader. On his deathbed, he overcomes the dark side, accepting his fate happily, and he looks upon his son with his own eyes, and he feels love and lets go those dark emotions that held him for so long. I could go on and on. How many stories do you have where an old distant father who's like a Scrooge is on their deathbed, but they finally drop their demeanor and tell their children that they're proud of them. They overcome their pride and show love. That's a trope that's everywhere, and it works fine. But here's the big problem. Neo being mute is not something to be overcome. It's not a character flaw. Let me be clear, you're talking about a disability. Okay, perhaps not, there is selective mutism where because of various factors, or simply someone's want, it is a choice, and I'll cover that later. But for now, you're covering it as if it's an actual disability in her case. In a general sense, you could say that a disability is something to kind of deal with, to continue living your life and not letting it hold you back. That's usually a positive outlook and approach to it. Now, there are wide varieties of disabilities, and obviously everyone's experience with them and people that have them, they're all different. But here's the thing. It is a horrible approach to say that what completes a disabled character is at one poignant moment in the story, the ability to just overcome their disability. To say that what you want to complete the character is for them to do something that betrays who they are. The equivalent would be having a deaf character, who, just like Neo, is perfectly fine and beloved as a character, and in the big moment, their life is saved because someone yells to them to duck and they just heard it the once. Or perhaps they're dying in someone's arms, their true love, and that person whispers, "I love you." And you see their face change because they finally heard one thing one time before they died, and now they're complete. No! Absolutely not! That's not a nice thing. That's not a, magical moment because it's about love. It's turning the disability into something that they need to beat, to be completed, to have their arc, to be done, and it's just not okay. If you have a character who doesn't have use of their legs, it shouldn't be glorified as their big moment by suddenly gaining the ability to stand up because it's needed for something. What a betrayal of their character. Turning their disability into a character flaw they need to overcome it's ableist, it's terrible. It just is. Saying that what Neo needs and should do is to beat her being mute with the power of love or determination, that does a huge disservice to her character. It does a disservice to anyone living with any kind of disability to tell them that what they should do is conquer it as if it isn't there, because that shows how strong they are, or how much they cared for someone else. It's a horrible message to send. Instead, look at who Neo is. A mute character that has never been held back by the fact that she is. She's one of the most beloved characters on the show, and through her expressions and her body language does perfectly fine working around the fact she's mute. The same goes for all the examples I mentioned. You don't have the deaf character saved because they can suddenly hear. No, you instead have them being their character, not defined by the fact they're deaf. Have them find their own workarounds and define them more than just that they have this disability. Same goes for a character in a wheelchair. If your characterization of that person is the fact they're in a wheelchair, and their arc is to somehow overcome it, like it's a character flaw, then you've written a horrible shell of a character. That's not who they are. Even a character like, let's say, Professor X. If you're talking about him, and the point you focus on is the fact he's in a wheelchair without mentioning that he's one of the most gifted psychics in the world who founded a school to help all those dealing with being different, and he heads a superhero team, then how much are you taking away from him? He's not a character anymore, he's a wheelchair. I think, on a writing standpoint, my feeling can be summarized by saying this, that a condition or a disability is a character trait, not a character flaw. It describes the character, it may inform the actions of a character, but it's not something the character needs to work on and overcome to be better. And the thing is, we've done some of this before. Look at Yang. See, overcoming an injury or adapting to a new disability, these things are stories that can work. That journey. If your story is someone coming to terms with now having to be in a wheelchair and adapting to a new way of life, and that change, then that's a story. To have someone recover from a grueling process after a big injury, but they can work back to a different living state, then that's also okay. That's real. But saying that Neo being mute is something she needs to overcome by presenting it as a big character moment of her speaking, that's a terrible way to look at her as a character. To have her speak undoes everything she's accomplished without needing to speak. We have never needed to hear her talk to connect with her. Like I mentioned earlier, look at how strong the support for her is. Look at how much material the fandom has created around her. If you're one of those people that loves Neo, why do you feel then that she needs to speak and change to have a great moment? That it's somehow something we should lead up to. We gain nothing by having her speak, except saying that somehow her needing to speak is so important, when she's a perfect example of how something like that doesn't have to define a character. She's the character more than any other in the community that we demanded to see and were relentless about bringing her back. And I need to ask, did you demand that she has to come back because you wanted to hear her speak? Or did you want her back because you loved who she is? Because Neo doesn't speak, and if you wanted her back to hear her talk, then you didn't want Neo back. Okay, and before anyone jumps on me, I have done my research into mutism, by the way. Yes, it's true that there are definitely some forms of mutism that can be overcome. There's a wide variety of causes for it, from injury through trauma. You need to look into if it's neurogenic or psychogenic. Without going over every single example, let me just put it this way. If Neo as a character was someone who was desperate to talk, or it suggested there's a reason that they didn't talk, then maybe you could do a thing with them overcoming these issues. But as it stands, it's never been the case. She's always been presented as completely mute and as never having a single issue with it. You could, as the creators, scroll down the list of different causes of mutism and pick one that allows her to talk and say that she wanted to all along. You can do that. But just because you'd then be right in canon on a technical level does a great disservice to the character. to retroactively apply this to a great character you've built, but who you've never put any time into even hinting at those angles previously. You'd be adding it in just to justify the later decision that you wanted her to talk. That doesn't work for the narrative. People have to look that up as secondary information because it wouldn't be in the show because you haven't put the groundwork in the show so far. None of her actions, none of her behaviors have ever shown or indicated it's something she has trouble with, or something she could overcome, or something she wants to overcome. It just is who she is. It's part of who she is. I hope she does use Jin, and she uses a recording from her scroll. It'd be fun if she was recording Oscar them on video and just uses him saying it. Or she uses text-to-speech. Or something else clever, because that's who she is. You could say that you hope the magic artifact has a workaround for people with disabilities, but let's be real, the gods weren't very considerate. Why would they be in this matter? Instead, have Neo be clever and slick about it, and effortless, as she always is in all things. Never has her lack of speech defined her, and never has it held her back. That's the point, even if she's a selective mute, if it's her choice not to speak. And equivalent to this would be something like a vow of silence, for some reason. Well, if that were the case, it also betrays the character to then have them break it. I'm sorry for the cliche example, but when thinking about vows of silence, obviously monks come to mind. If you have a monk character that has taken a vow of silence, is it more satisfying that they break their beliefs and what they're dedicated to for just a dramatic moment? Or is it better that they hold firm in their beliefs and find another way around the situation and stay true to themselves? There is no satisfaction then in a character that everyone already loves betraying themselves, just for a cheap moment. Also, while I'm here, there are theories like it's magic or she's cursed or something. Look, it's a cute idea, but there's very limited amounts of magic in this world. The maidens don't put curses on people, and the big evil witch literally does not know who she is. Also, if it's somehow someone's semblance, then it'd be really weak and hollow thing to have done that in an unseen backstory, never touched on it until it's convenient just to give you your moment with zero impact. Look, I think I've said what I need to say. I'm not going to keep going. I considered using a real-life example from my life of someone who's mostly deaf and therefore mute, but I realize you have no way to verify if I'm telling the truth or not, and I don't want to drag them into something they didn't agree to be involved in. But honestly, I don't think I need to. Just from a writing perspective, it seems clear to me that having Neo speak is so unnecessary. It doesn't make her complete or better because it's not something she's missing, it's just who she is. People who want the dramatic death scene, for example, right? Wouldn't it be sweeter and so much more rewarding if she was laying down in someone's arms and her determined face went soft and her eyes looked past all the people as if seeing someone that they couldn't, and she very softly and sweetly smiles, an expression we've never seen on her face before. No snarky smirk that we're used to, just comfort and happiness, and she slowly drifts away to be at peace. She doesn't have to say anything because we all get it, and it's 100% Neo to the end. The same would go if she got her revenge and you saw her out on a small peak of some small mountain, putting a little lit candle in a little rock formation and wiping away a tear. A little memorial for Roman that only she really gets the meaning of. And it's done. He's been avenged. She'll never stop missing him, but there is also a world in front of her now to find a new purpose in. There's so much you can do with her ranging from awesome to touching without needing the betrayal of her speaking. Without characterizing her like the fact she's mute is something to dramatically lean on and overcome for the big moment. Just let Neo be Neo, because her being herself is why everyone fell in love with her in the first place. But that's it. No joke at the end. This was a more real talk I wanted to have. I guess if nothing else, this video might get some discussion going in the fandom that isn't just the abundance of people who say they can't wait for Neo to talk. Even just from a writing standpoint, taking all the real life out of it, it still doesn't serve her established character at all. Neo managed to connect with all of us without saying a word. If she can do that, there's no reason to ever change her. Anyway, be true to yourselves, be kind to each other. My name is RWBY, and even if you disagree with me, I do sincerely hope you have a wonderful day. And I hope I did alright.